Chronicles TV on air. We are now live in 3, 2, 1.
Would the witnesses state their names and occupation for the court, please?
I, Barry Caden, Governor of Barclay Prison.
Everyone calls me Gossip. I sell jaunty little tidbits. Your other persona, if you don't mind? Oh, I don't beg your pardon, but of course. I do beg your pardon. Where's the wife? My name is Daily Vigil. I used to be the chief warder at Barclay Prison. The reason you've been summoned here to court today is to testify for the jailbreak of the so-called professor 10 years ago.
The professor? We've already been through all this a decade ago, and the conclusion was that there was nothing untoward happen.
A convict escaped from your prison, Governor. Hardly what you be called nothing untoward?
Well...
The convict's death certificate was somehow falsified after he was allegedly executed, and he escaped the prison inside his own coffin. A plan of that complexity could never have been carried out without the help of somebody influenced inside the prison. Governor Caden, don't imagine the passage of time will afford you any protection. If it turns out that you were involved in the plot to break Mr. Asogi out in prison, then of course, the consequence will be very serious. In all likelihood, a capital punishment.
Look, hold on there, laddie. All I did was...
Witness, Governor Caden.
Sir.
You have critical role to play in the public safety of our country. A great responsibility to shoulders. The significance of your testimony in court cannot be understood. Therefore, think carefully before you speak. And Prosecutor Asogi, if you threaten the witness again, you will be held in contempt of court. My apologies, my lord. There's no disputing the fact that an intricate jailbreak plot was enacted 10 years ago. Clearly, you were both involved in some way. So you were testified before the court now. Explain exactly what took place. Very well. Let the witnesses give their formal testimony. Tell the court everything you know of the plot to break Asogi. Here we go. The jailbreak plot. Oh, we're getting close.
It was the day the Japanese jock was found guilty. The directive came from prosecutor's office. I assigned the convict to the chief warder Vigil here, and then put the plan into action behind the scenes.
I was responsible for Asogi right up until the night of this execution, but I knew nothing of his plot.
I didn't care if there was some negotiation between the convict and the prosecutor's office. All I did was carry out my duty, for the great British Empire.
A directive from the prosecutor's office. Are you saying that was a jailbreak plot?
Aye, that's right.
Who sent it? Who authorized that plan?
I didn't ken that.
You're saying you don't know?
Listen, there wasn't nothing about the professor case that was nothing unusual in some way. I didn't ask any questions. I just did what I was told to do. More than that, I couldn't tell you.
I see. But if the jailbreak plan originated from the prosecutor's office, then one thing is very clear. As a suspect, there were clan-side dealings going on between Mr. Asogi and the office. The jailbreaks were promised in exchange for Mr. Asogi admitting to crimes he did commit. That counsel is nothing more than speculation on your part. So, let me ask the defense. Oh, yes, my lord. I fail to see how these witnesses have any pertinent information here. Do you intend to assert your right to cross-examine? Yeah, absolutely. I have no intention of squandering a single opportunity, my lord. It seems all you Japanese are fiercely tenacious.
Very well. Proceed, counsel.
Here we go. It was the day the Japanese jock was found guilty. The directive came from the prison. I assigned the convict to the chief warder Vigil here and put the plan into action behind the scenes. I was responsible for Asogi right up until the night of his execution, but I knew nothing of any plot. I didn't care if there was some negotiation between convict and prosecutor's office. but you already acknowledged the orders came from the prosecutor's office to arrange for the man's escape. There must have been some sort of negotiation. It's the only explanation.
Alright, well, be as it may, I don't know nothing about that. The witness stand is no place for telling what you don't know for sure. I can that much, I do.
Then I presume you also know this. Not telling what you do know is a criminal offense. So you were just following orders, is that it? I'm afraid that won't absolve you of guilt here. A man was killed illegally, even if he was condemned criminal. You may very well be found complicit in murder, Governor. So that's what's B, is it? Even with the threat of conviction, you won't break your silence. All but there was carry out my duty, the Reg Great Empire.
Hold it!
Did you not notice anything unusual happening in the lead up to that night? No, everything was unusual, exception after exception. After all, it was the professor. The man had terrorized the country as never before with his crimes. In order to hide his identity, he was forced to wear an iron mask over his head. Hideous treatment.
The fellow was surprisingly docile for someone who'd taken the lives of 5 of the country's nobles.
Being the chief warder, I was the only person permitted to approach his cell. I can still hardly believe that I was duped by my own country. I believe you jumped from the window of the governor's office when the jailbreak was blamed on you, didn't you?
Losh, Visual, I can't apologize enough.
No, Governor, I don't believe you can. I won't change what happened. And what else can you tell us about the situation, Governor Caden? Okay, we're backing up again. I assigned the convict to report here and put the plan to action behind the scenes. So, Mr. Vigil, you didn't know anything about it at all? That's right. My only role in the scheme was as a scapegoat. But that's right, isn't it, Governor?
Some poor beggar had to take the rap for it.
Alright then, who else didn't know about the plan?
I've no first idea, laddie. My part in the whole business was basically just dealing with the aftermath. I would not be surprised if there were other folk in the prison service who gave us similar orders.
So you don't know who else was involved?
Hey, that's right. All I can tell you is that the night it actually happened, the person at the reins was Dr. Stevens.
Dr. Courtney Stevens? Or Dr. Scythe, as she known now? Why did I have to get caught up in such a terrible business? Okay, I think we got our hint. Hold up. Back. Oh wait, we don't have the thing anymore, so why am I going through this? We don't have the autopsy report of the old file. Chief Warder is relieved from post meeting, blah blah. By Barry Caden. Indications that the jailbreak plot was conceived prior to the conviction incarceration. It's believed that the convict engaged in some form of negotiation with prison staff in order to secure assistance. Full disclosure of information regarding negotiation will be demanded.
Hold it!
And you say you don't know who actually issued the directive?
Aye, that's right. All I can be sure of is that it was the office.
But if it was from the prosecutor's office, that narrows down who could have issued straight away. And it wasn't me.
I can't even say with certainty that it didn't originate from the prosecutor's office.
What?
There's no telling where it started. There's a fair chance it came from a higher up the ladder. Basically, I cannot give you an indication of who was behind it.
You can't be serious. All we can say for sure is that the order must have come from somebody in authority, I suppose.
The likes of us on the ground, as it were, didn't know bother with other speculation. We just got the job done.
Hold it!
Did you carry out the plan as entirety?
Aye, I did everything I could at the time.
As you know, Genshin Asaki was shot dead in Lowgate Cemetery after they escaped. Tell me, was that part of the plan too?
My instructions were to do with getting the jock out of the jail, and nothing more. I cannot tell you anything about what happened after that. Only, personally, I believe his death was the last part.
So mean. Excuse me.
It's always the last one. Mr. Vigil, is something wrong? Yes, sir. What can I do for you, sir? He's saluting now? What is it? Some sort of Barclay convention? What Government Caden was just saying seemed to upset you. Did something bring to mind, perhaps? For the last 10 years, I've completely blotted out the memories of that time from my mind. I was betrayed by my superiors in the name of my country. Just as my father was betrayed, it seems. But you see, thinking back now, I really can't imagine the shooting of Mr. Sogi in cemetery was ever part of the plan. What makes you think that? Well, it just doesn't make sense, does it? To make the man admit to crimes he did commit with the promise of a jailbreak only to kill him in the end. That's treachery of the worst kind, but the point is, if the intention was always to betray him, why would there be any need for all the chicaneries of an escape? Huh? Yes, that's quite true. If whoever negotiated with Asogi never attempted to keep his her end the bargain, it would have been far simpler just to let the man be executed in prison as dictated by his sentence. It all happened in the vast chamber of secrets that is Barclay, behind the high prison walls. I suppose nobody knows what really went on in the execution room now. Yes, it's an unsettling mystery, certainly.
Truth be told, there is a wee matter that's never quite made sense to me. If you believe there was some kind of negotiation behind the jailbreak between Asogi and a body at the top, it doesn't quite add up, does it?
Governor Caden, I must insist that you explain these doubts that you have by amending your formal testimony.
Gods. Alright, go on then.
It seems to me that Japanese fellow did not have nothing to bargain with.
Hold it.
Admitting to the crimes? That was what he had to bargain with, surely.
I cannot say that myself. After all, did the prosecution have no conclusive evidence against the Carly, eh?
This, you mean, discovered during the final victim's autopsy. There's every possibility the conclusive evidence was fabricated by Scotland Yard prosecutor's office.
Objection.
Possibilities are all very well, but nothing has been proven. You can holler about misconduct in the trial 10 years ago all you like. But if you can't establish that it happened with hard evidence, no one's going to listen. Hey, that's right. So what I'm saying is, the convict had nothing he could use for any kind of bargaining at all.
The witness makes absolute point logically. It would seem no negotiation could have taken place. And yet the plan to break the man out of prison was definitely put into practice. So he must have been armed with something that gave him an angle to negotiate. So Asogi-san agreed to confess to the crimes because he was assured he'd be broken out of prison. I really don't think Kazuma's father would have engaged in such negotiations. And perhaps something compelled him to agree. What a terrible thing, using the law to legitimize such underhanded dealings with a desperate man, only to double-cross him in the end. It's quite opposite of justice. I can't help feeling there is something about this apparent negotiation that doesn't quite add up. Something doesn't quite add up, Mr. Naruto? No, it doesn't, but I can't quite put my finger on what yet. In that case, we must keep digging until we find the identified blah blah blah. He had nothing to bargain with. He had nothing to bargain with. Only thing comes to my mind is sad freaking will testimony. Karuma?
Objection.
Nope.
confessing under oath to murders he didn't commit on a verbal assurance of later being broken out of prison. Genshin Osoki was taking an incredibly risky gamble. Very true. There was nothing to stop British breaking their word and executing him behind closed doors anyway. Under normal circumstances, no man would stake his life on a gentleman's agreement like that. Which means that Mr. Osoki must have had a trump card. Something that guaranteed he wouldn't be betrayed. Something kind of a weapon.
Obvious, the fella could not possibly have anything like that.
But you know that he did, Governor. The Asogi Papers, the name given to the last will and testament of Genshin Osogi. It turns out that Mr. Osogi was hiding his will in the cell at Barclay. Chief Warder Vigil caught him with one day.
You squealed, did ya, you wee rat? Did I not tell you to keep that a secret?
You can't touch me now. When Mr. Vigil caught sight of that will, though, through the bars of the convict cell, Mr. Osogi pleaded with the warder. Alright then, but what's on the paper?
A last will and testament. This will is the only weapon I have left now. A weapon?
And after the convict had been killed following the elaborate pretense of the jailbreak, the document mysteriously disappeared, didn't it? Well, yes. All the prison warders searched through the belongings in the cell, but that will was just nowhere to be found. And I understand it, an exhaustive search was made for the document which became known as the Asogi Papers. Governor Caden, I believe you ordered your prison staff to find it at all costs, didn't you? Would I be right in saying that you knew? You knew that the so-called Asogi Papers had the potential to make great waves somehow.
What blazes are you blabbing about? The will was found right and proper, and the fellow saw where I could see it.
But how can that be? We're in the cell. We all searched that place from top to bottom.
Well, you did not do your proper job, and you pilly-wally galoot.
You can't criticize me now. I showed it
to you before, didn't I know? You're no lawyer.
Yes, you did. I have the document here. It's written in Japanese and reads, The Last Will and Testament of Genshin Asogi.
Which means everything is as it should be.
Not quite, my lord. You see, there's an undeniable inconsistency here.
What?
What inconsistency? Mr. Sogi described the document as the only weapon he had left, and yet this will contains nothing of significance at all. Nothing that would have given the convict any leverage.
Are you suggesting, my learned friend, that the last will and testament stored at Barclay Prison all these years is actually a fake?
As has clearly been demonstrated already, what went on in Barclay Prison was far from above board.
That last vilification by the defense was an affront to the entire British legal system. The abuse of notion of a weapon is something for which we have only former Chief Warder's words. The man could quite easily be lying, or at the very least solely mistaken.
What? No! I definitely heard him say that. I swear.
Clearly we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to know exactly what happened with these so-called Asogi Papers. A waste of time. If the will was fake, where is the real document?
Mr. Vigil was stabbed in the back for the judiciary 10 years ago. He lost everything, nearly his own life. And now you're going to do it again. You're ready to brand him a liar and turn your back on him without even letting him defend himself. It's clear that Bargain Briz is hiding something. It's clear that the jailbreak was masterminded by somebody in the prosecutor's office. It's clear that some illicit negotiation took place. Is your lordship just going to gloss over these obvious reprehension facts?
What did you say?
Testify! 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 Testify!
It would seem that a vocal few here are utterly blind to the truth. Very well then, let the witness testify again. Tell the court precisely what you think you saw of the convict's last will and testament. Yes, sir, my lord. As the warder responsible for condemned convicts, I attended Mr. Asogi and kept him watch over his cell. The night after he was found guilty in court, he was doing something with that in his cell. We turned the cell inside out looking for after the execution, but to no avail. I only found about the Asogi person when a directive came telling me to impound him. The document was folded in Fallow's robes. That was left in the cell. A kimono, I think it's called. In his kimono? That's a lie. We searched every inch of the man's cell. We looked through all his clothes. It can't be true. Were you not satisfied with calling me a liar at once then, you wee waffiger? There's nothing you can do about it now. You don't have a hold on me anymore. Other than the hold you like to take on a car friend, of course. Is that what you're going to do, is it? Why are you shaking? Are you going to give me a good shake again, or are you too scared? Little and large. What a double act. We compiled with Asogi's will as far as possible. All of his personal effects were delivered to his family at home in Japan. As a courtesy to the homeland of the most notorious killer our country has ever seen. And we were much obliged. I could confirm that all my father's belongings arrived safely. Aye, and you cannot deny the handwriting is that of your own mother? Yes, there's no mistaking that it's my father's brushwork. Really? And this last will of testament was the man's last weapon, was it? I think we could safely assume the convict was merely prattling, knowing that his end was nigh. So, counsel for defense, your cross-examination, please. Yes, my lord. Reason, blah, blah, blah. Let me see that thing. I attended Mr. Overwatch's cell. The night after he was found guilty in court, he was doing something with that will in his cell. Back it up. We turned the cell inside out looking for out the execution, but no avail. I've only found about that circuit when a directive came telling me to impound them. The document was in the folds of the fellow's robe that was left in the cell.
Hold it!
In Mr. Asogi's kimono? Aye. The only one who brought him with him was locked up. Yes, he was permitted to have his personal effects with him during his incarceration, I understand. That's right. He was granted as much freedom as possible during the few days before his execution. Indeed. He had a number of items of personal significance, I remember. He was very reluctant to part with them. Some books, that kimono, his sword. His sword? Karuma, the famous sword of the Asogi clan. It bears the soul of my family. I don't doubt it, but I wasn't really getting at that. Forget about the soul of the clan. Could the man have a more obvious weapon? Have some respect, Rinosuke. Respectful silence. The warriors carry firearms at all times, and the inmates have shackles around their ankles. He couldn't have hurt anybody with that thing. Still, he was allowed a sword, but no writing materials. Aye. He wrote that will before he came to stay with us at Barclay, you see? Dr. Mikotoba was asked to bring the necessary Japanese writing implements to the prosecutor's office. A Suzuri inkstone, black sumi ink, and some hashi rice paper, no doubt. I was present when he wrote it, but I'm sorry to say, the letters just look like scribbling. Ah! Back at the last one again.
Excuse me.
Are you feeling faint, Mr. Vigil? Mr. Vigil! Sir! It was Scarlet, sir. What? Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I didn't mean to blurt it out like that. The blood? Less swaying and more explaining would be helpful. Is it something about the testimony we just heard? Have you recalled something of importance? Something of importance. Possibly or possibly not.
I'm unable to tell which way he's leaning, I'm afraid.
My lord, the defense asks that Mr. Vigil be permitted to supplement his testimony. With this, possibly or possibly not important detail. Permission granted. Go ahead, Mr. Vigil. Yes, it was Scarlet. As I remember, the document was written in scarlet ink, but perhaps I'm mistaken. Let's do the thing and see how fast we can do it. If not, we'll come back to it.
Objection!
Nope. Because that thing was found in the stomach. Show me the thing again. Recent scarlet ink stains visible on the little and ring fingers of the right hand, but no undocumented corresponding ink was found.
Objection!
Ha! No pressing. Scarlet colored writing is what you said you thought you saw, Mr. Vigil. And I believe that exactly what you did see. What? However, again, you have no evidence to say that. Have a look at this report. That's my brother's autopsy report. Yes, and there's something in here that's bothered me since I first read it. It states that scarlet-colored ink stains were noted on the finger on the victim's right hand. Yes, so it does. Scarlet ink? Now, I'm not familiar with the habits of the British aristocracy, freely admit. But I would hazard a guess that they don't go around with ink stains on their fingertips, do they? Your wit is not appreciated. My brother was a well-bred and fastidious man. Should ink have sullied his fingertips, he would have cleaned them immediately. What is your point, counsel? My point is this. Whatever Lord Clint von Zeeks was writing in the gnat is unusually colored ink. It must have been directly before his death, because he died before he had the opportunity to clean his hand. What? I remember something troubled me at the time. At the scene, the lid of my brother's inkwell was open. But Clint was punctualist about such things. It seems unusual. And no document panned on the color of the ink that was in the inkwell was ever found. So the document had disappeared. Are you suggesting that the document my father had in his hand that night in his cell was the same document that Lord Clint von Zeeks was writing moments before his death? Then, it was. If Mr. Vigil's testimony is to be believed, it can only mean that, yes. Mr. Vigil! Sir! When you spotted Mr. Sogi with the document in his cell, your precise words were the following, were they not? Alright then, but what's on the paper? A last will and testament. This will is the only weapon I have left now. A last will and testament. If the conversation really did go as Mr. Vigil says, then what we know completely changes the meaning of what Asogi said. You really think? Mr. Vigil did indeed see the convict with a will, but it wasn't that of Genshin Asogi. It was the last will and testament of Lord Clint von Zeeks. No. What?
Objection!
This is madness. My brother's last will and testament? That would mean that he had to chosen to die. That is what it would mean, yes. No, impossible. That is utterly out of the question. Lord von Zeeks. Clint was pursuing the professor. It consumed him day and night. Whatever happened, he would never have abandoned his investigation before its conclusion. Never! He wouldn't rest until the job was done, until the killer was caught. The idea that he would willingly accept his own death is obscene.
Objection!
And yet, we can be sure that he was writing his will moments before his death, and that Genshin Asogi came to be in possession of that document.
So what could the will possibly have contained? Clearly something that couldn't be made public under any circumstance whatsoever. Because armed with that document, my father was able to negotiate with the judiciary for his life. It was something so damning that it prompted the powers that be enact the darling Jailbreak plot. Yes, there can be no question the will contained information of the utmost secrecy. Information of the utmost secrecy. No, it couldn't be. What? I'm drawing blanks.
I've heard more than enough. Pursuing this notion of phantom will, nobody can contest to having such serves absolutely no purpose.
Objection!
No, my lord, that's unacceptable. What did you say, counsel?
The last will testament that Genshin Osogi had in his life possession was that of Lord Clint von Zeeks. All the testimony and evidence presented to the court has logically led to us that possibility. We have a duty to pursue the lie of reasoning to this conclusion.
But with no possibility of knowing the contents of the document, there is no line of reasoning to pursue.
A reason why Lord Clint von Zeeks, a man of high noble standing, would have chosen death. Information so secret, people in the judiciary would be willing to negotiate the jailbreak of a condemned killer.
I don't get it.
The only explanation that fits those facts is an unthinkable truth that turns obsolete everything out of its head. But it's just too hideous. Mr. Naruhodo? However difficult the situation might become, you work with your client in pursuit of the truth. That's what you resolved to do when you entered the courtroom this morning, if I'm not mistaken, Miss Sato. So, hold your head high and keep soldiering on.
I don't get it. I don't get what we're trying to after.
You're right. 10 years ago, in his final moments, Lord Clint von Zeeks left behind a will. A will that Genshin Osogi was able to use as a weapon to negotiate his escape from prison. In all probability, the details in the will were related to the Professor case.
The defense's last statement is mere conjecture. What are you getting at, man?
Ryunosuke! I don't get it, still. As soon as these words come out of my mouth, there's no going back. I believe that the last will and testament of Lord Clint von Zeeks was in fact... I don't get it.
A report? Accusation? A confession?
Report? It seems to me that it was probably some kind of report.
Some kind?
Well, remember that Lord Clint von Zeeks was a well-bred and fastidious man.
Okay, we're going back.
Okay, what exactly? You can do it this, Mr. Naruhodo. I believe that what Lord Clint von Zeeks actually penned that day was a confession.
A confession?
Regarding the mass murderer known as the Professor and his true identity.
Objection!
Enough. Counsel. What are you saying? Do you ever even realize, a confession about the true identity of the Professor? That would mean
Your brother was the killer? Lord von Zeeks, I appreciate this much. Must be hard to take in. But it's only the explanation that fits. The killer that terrorized London a decade ago and became known as the Professor. The man believed to have murdered 5 members of the aristocracy. Wasn't Genshin Osogi at all. No, you can't be suggesting. He was in fact the man believed to have been the 5th victim. Lord Clint von Zeeks himself. The vampire has been struck. It's finally open, is it? Pandora's box?
The great Von Zieg's family, they've been thoroughbreds of the British tradition for years. And Lord Clint Von Zieg's, he was a paragon of justice in the capital. But he was actually a mass murderer?
My brother.
Oh, this is too awful. Poor Lord Van Zieks. I wonder, though, did he never suspect? Mr. Naruhodo. Lord Barrett Von Zieks is a brilliant prosecutor. Is it conceivable that he didn't realize what his older brother really was?
Order!
Lord Von Zieks. The professor made use of an enormous hound as his murder weapon. Tell me, did your brother own a dog?
Yes, he did. Balmug. He was known as the hunting dog. People call him a giant. I don't believe this. When my brother would go hunting in the forest on the grounds behind the house, he always took Balmug. After Clint's death, the creature passed away too, almost as if he were following his master. He was a magnificent hunting dog, worthy of the jewel-studded collar around his neck.
Jewel-studded collar.
That's right, though sadly, some years ago now, it was stolen by a thief who broke into the house one night.
A jewel-studded collar stolen by a thief. It so happens that myself and my colleagues have crossed such a collar during our time in London.
How could you?
There was an old emblem attached to the collar too, made of pure gold. It was topped with a small crown and bore an ornament of capital letter B.
What? An emblem bearing the initial B.
Oh my, you know it!
It's the insignia of the Baskerville family.
What? The Baskerville? Why is that name coming up now?
Baskerville is the family name of my late brother's widow. The pure gold emblem was an heirloom which Clint acquired upon their marriage. There can be no doubt then. The color you described was Balmug's.
The family insignia of Lord Clint Van Zink's widow?
There was a considerable amount of blood on the collar when we saw it. Since we know the dog was used for hunting, it could have been from the quarry, of course. But it could equally have been from human prey. So in fact, the person responsible for the murders of nobles and royals was a noble himself. And that threatened to be an enormous scandal that would invariably destabilize British society. My father knew that and was using it to negotiate his way out of the unjust charges brought against him. But at the very last hour, those he bargained with betrayed him, slaying him mercilessly in the foreign soil.
Well, can you deny it, Lord Strongheart?
10 years have passed, and still now the 6 million inhabitants of our great capital rest easy, believing that justice was done. That though his anonymity remains, the diabolical murderer was caught and executed. Very well then, you may have the truth. Tell me then. Tell me what Clint really was. Lord Clint von Zieks was too pure of heart. When he became prosecutor and went in pursuit of the black roots of crime, he drove himself into a corner. He came to the uncomfortable realization that to fight the most fiendish of criminals requires one to become even more fiendish in oneself. Clint. Did we ever find out who the Reaper was?
The 19th century was truly a miraculous 100 years for Great Britain, and indeed the whole world. New industry, new technology, and with the birth of the Metropolitan Police Service, new law and order. But these dazzling new developments meant ever-deepening shadows were cast on society. Water sullied by factories, air thick by noxious fumes, and crime, growing daily to fill the darkness. That's today's society. Lord Clint von Zieks made it a mission to combat that darkness. But as time went on, it slowly ate at his soul until eventually he was consumed. It's ironic, really, and somewhat surprising, that the truth has once again been unearthed by a Japanese. Once again, excuse me. What do you mean? 10 years ago, your father, Genshin Asogi, turned up at my office one night. The professor? Yes, beyond all shadow of a doubt. You must issue a warrant to search his home at once. Don't be absurd. The man comes from one of the country's most illustrious families. He is a paragon of justice here in the capital. Yes, that's the point. That's why none of you British can see it. He's using his noble status as a diversion, well as to commit the aristocracy crimes behind the scenes. Do you have evidence? Nothing definite, as yet. But as he keeps enormous savage hound on the estate, we need the full support of the judiciary for this. We're up against a member of the aristocracy. So a large family estate has a fierce guard dog. You should know that commonplace here in Britain. I'm sorry, but I can't possibly put Scotland Yard onto this base on the tenacious accusation of a visiting student. So I turned down Otsuki's plea. As a result, he took it upon himself to visit the Van Zieks mansion on his own. We can only imagine now what happened between the two men. Though we know the outcome, of course. Lord Clint von Zieks perished. I don't believe this. So, in actual fact, Kazuma's father did. He made the late Lord von Zieks meet the same fate. He put a permanent end to the professor killings by taking the drastic measure of ending the perpetrator's life. As soon as I hurried to the mansion. When I arrived, it was easy to grasp what had happened. And what about the will? Asogi must have already taken it. Nothing of the nature was found at the scene. We have no idea the existence of such a document at the time. I was the only person who knew of the true identity of the professor. So, I resolved to keep it a secret, and to guard the secret to bitter end. So you're admitting to it? That you were behind it all? It was you, then, who pinned the crimes of my father? I did what needed to be done in order to protect the law and order of British Empire. Even if that meant employing an unforgivable ruse. Then it was you who arranged the fabricated evidence. I ordered the detective to take care of it, well as keeping the truth from him, naturally. Gregson. Obviously, he opposed me at first. Are you off your rocker? We can't do something like that. There's no question that it was Asogi who murdered Lord von Zieks. The house staff have made statements that they saw the man running from the mansion that night. Yes, well, I've no doubt it was the Japanese fella. But we haven't got a shred of conclusive evidence against that man. And worse than that, he doesn't keep a dog, so we're short of a murder weapon to boot. And we're short on time, Gregson. We must put a stop to this man's rampage for the good of the country. So we'll use whatever means necessary. Do I make myself clear, detective? Blimey. So that night 10 years ago, when I was attacked by those thugs in the back streets, and Genshin's ring was taken, that was him, was it? That was Gregson and some hired help?
The detective handed the stolen ring to Dr. Wilson, who faked its discovery from the victim's stomach during the autopsy. And in the light of the decisive evidence, Mr. Asogi was found guilty of the charges brought against him. However, behind the scenes, he actually already struck a deal with the accusers, in which he agreed to silently accept the charges. But I just don't believe that part. As far as I knew the man, my father despised such underhand dealings. It was extremely easy to make him comply. You see, he had one crippling weakness. What weakness? Isn't it obvious? You, Kazuma. Me? Perhaps you have no desire to return to your homeland, Asogi. What? Although I hear you have a 14-year-old son, I thought it was 8. Agree to cooperate and accept your guilt without contention, and you will see Japan and your son again. You scoundrel! Whether you choose wisely or not, it will be a close trial by order of Her Majesty. So whatever rash claims you might make in court will have no trouble stifling it. There's only one outcome for you, Asogi. The gallows. Don't forget that I still have a weapon at my disposal. A document revealing a truth that I know you're desperate to keep hidden. Yes, I had to skip my mind, which is the only reason I'm willing to bargain with you. I only want to protect this country's law and order, understand? So, what's it to be, Asogi? Kazuma. He did it for me? As I told him at the time, my motive was simply to protect Britain from the damage the truth would do. To protect this country's law and order at any cost.
Objection!
I've never dared let myself even consider this possibility until now. When in the light of all this treachery, I have to ask. The mastermind behind the Reaper of the Bailey. Was it you, Lord Male Strongheart? A rather brilliant idea, wouldn't you say, Lord Berg von Zieks? That the spirit of your late brother, the paragon of justice, should return to reap justice for his sibling. Could there be more appetizing tale for London's masters, I ask you? What? What brazen? I knew that you played the part of perfection, but your role really wasn't some embodiment of death. No, you were London's guardian angel. An angel with bloody hands? I think not. Those who cooperate with me already were only too happy to participate in my plan. Inspector Gregson, Dr. Wilson. My minions worked tirelessly to ensure that the finger of the guild could never come to rest on you. It's all thanks to them that you were exalted as the demigod the Reaper became. But Dr. Wilson left Britain 4 years ago when he was invited to work in Japan. That's right, so I had to employ service of his young protege after that. Dr. Courtney Scythe. Scythe? So what would the execution of the prosecutor read the Reaper of the Valley? I successfully safeguarded law and order in our mighty capital for the past decade. That is everything. My lords, ladies and gentlemen, I do hereby confess it was I who sired the concept of the Reaper. However, let me say in my defense, it was all for the preservation of law and order across the entire empire. And he wanted to have his own, and he wants to be Attorney General. Why does it sound like more for its final boss? There is no one left now who can reveal the precise truth of what happened 10 years ago. Therefore, this trial can no go further. There's only one person left. Now, I would like to entreat all those present. Beyond those four walls, nobody needs to know the truth. Even Her Majesty must protect from this. I trust you all appreciate the importance of my request. It is, of course, for the good of the country. Can he do this? Can the trial really end now? I have one last question for the accused, Lord Von Zeeks. What? Of course, I know that you're a highly accomplished prosecutor, so I find it hard to believe that you didn't have any doubts at all. That you never suspected that your older brother... Yes, the same thought occurred to me. Not me. It was only once, but... Yes, I couldn't say that I never had my doubts. My brother's sense of justice was extremely strong, perhaps too strong, I observed. In that time, there were members of the aristocracy who were bleeding the country dry for their own gain. And since they were nobles, they were untouchable. For my brother, it was a source of great turmoil. And coincidentally, at the same time, the professor began his terrifying reign. During the time of the professor killings, my brother did not appear to himself. And that made you suspect? Yes. But it was only once, no more. Only once, really? Clint was the culprit. That was my collusion at the time, and I still believe that now. Do you have any evidence to support the idea? The third victim was Lord Chief Justice at the time. It was he who recognized my brother's potential and trained him as a prosecutor. No matter what circumstance, it's unthinkable that my brother could have killed his friend and mentor. That will do. Neither Clint Von Zeeks nor Getcha Soki will still walk this earth. However much we debate this matter now, we cannot hope to reach a conclusion. But there are only two exact pieces of evidence from the time. The woe-begone ring that acted as the incriminating evidence to condemn Getcha Soki, and the 3-page last will. 3-page? We found 2. There were only 2. Objection! The wretched truth of what happened is exactly as I've explained. Hold it! Hold it! Hold it! Later today, I will present myself at the Ministry of Justice for whatever section is deemed appropriate. That is all. Court is adjourned. Object! Object! Object!
Objection!
Thank you, Kazuma. Me. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have made this 11th hour discovery. 11th hour? What discovery? My lord, I'm afraid I must insist the trial continues. I beg your pardon? As the court has been reminded today already, we must stop at nothing to uncover the whole truth. And to that end, one particular statement made by somebody in this courtroom moments ago, it revealed a very subtle contradiction. What contradiction? But all I did was ask the accused one simple question. Well, it began with Lord Von Zeeks and his recollection of his brother, but Lord Stronger didn't permit the defendant to speak at length. Barely pointed out that we can draw no further useful conclusions here. So where is the contradiction? It's not him, it's you. One of them definitely just said something contradictory. It's time to identify who. It was Lord Strongheart, I'm sure of it. Something he said slightly off. Come on, Ryunosuke, think back to his words. Find the problem. Fast forward it. Fast forward it. Fast forward it. We got the ring. And the man said 3-page last will. We only got 2. Lord Strongheart, would you care to explain? Explain what, counsel?
Among the statements you made just a few moments ago, something you said it was inconsistent with a certain piece of evidence we have.
Inconsistent.
And while this inconsistency remains, the defense has a right to pursue an explanation.
Ryunosuke, what? Let me warn you about the statements you are making, Counsel. They may very well prove fatal.
He's not doing the entire thing, so we're good. Back. Here we go. This here is the will left by Mr. Asogi. The 2-page will.
What?
Yet moments ago, your precise words were the 3-page last will and testament. Could it be that originally there was a 3rd page?
For a moment, I thought perhaps you identified something worthwhile, but it's mere trifle, I see.
Trifle?
Governor Kaden? What can I do for you, sir?
You were present with the Japanese man penned his last will and testament.
Yeah, I was there for sure. Remember the black, worm-like scrawls to this day. And I'm quite certain, my lord, there were a 3rd page at the time.
What?
Only the first 2 pages were the actual will, though. If I mind correctly, the 3rd was a message to his lad back in Japan.
For legal purposes, we require only his will.
And we would have named what we wanted. Uncomfortable words would boot Britain to get back to Japan, eh? So it was decided that the 3rd page ought not to be sent.
Objection!
How dare you make that decision? I had a right to know what it said, to hear my father's final word to me. The courtroom is no place for sentimentally. Counsel?
As it happens, I have the 3rd page of the document with me near now.
My father's message. It will be given to you at the end of the proceedings. It'll be too late once the trial is over. We need to know what it says now. My lord, the defense calls for Genshin Asogi's last words to his son to be read out loud before the court now. Your request is denied. The unanimously molded words can be of no consequence
Objection!
now. The prosecution agrees. The court should know the content of the message. Every possible piece of evidence must be thoroughly examined.
Very well then, Governor Kaden. Your will be the 3rd blah 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 blah. Yes, sir. Only, I should point out, my lord, that I cannot actually read word language.
Just hear about shame on you, Barry.
If I could be of assistance here, I would be happy to translate the words into English for the court.
Father!
You're still here, are you, Dr. Mikotoba? Naturally, I consider myself a member of the judiciary. A bit a lonely one. Perhaps I should quietly withdraw after I translate Genshin's message.
Your cooperation is much appreciated.